So, anyway, I was just saying that thinking things that are permanent exaggerates their good qualities and their bad qualities. You know, if they appear good, they appear to be very, very good. That leads to greed and possessiveness. And if it appears bad, then it appears very, very bad, and that leads to anger. And out of those reactions, we say and do things that are harmful, and that creates suffering. Right? So that's the first of the three groups. I don't want to say a lot about the others, I'll just read them. In number 5, it says, the Buddha's fundamental teachings state that along with mistakenly viewing impermanent phenomena as permanent, there are 2 other distorted views responsible for our suffering. These are viewing things not capable of giving us true happiness as if they were capable of doing so. In other words, I like ice cream. Right? And some people, when they're eating a food that they really like, they may say, "Oh, this food is like nirvana." Like, well, the food is nice, but nirvana is everlasting. It's not just temporary pleasure, right? It's the complete overcoming of all suffering. So it's really an exaggeration to think, that food could be nirvana. Now, if we say that, we're just joking. Nobody believes us. We don't believe it. We're just saying, we're just using the words. But if you follow our actions, the way we run after attractive things, as if we think they're capable of giving us lasting happiness. We exaggerate their ability to satisfy us. And that comes from that second view, viewing things not capable of giving us true happiness as if they were capable of doing so. And we can see in the behavior of people all over the planet how prevalent that is. They run after things as if it was going to be the solution to all their life problems, and all it's going to do is just give them a moment of pleasure. So that's the second view. The third one affects everyone who's not an enlightened being. Everyone. The third one is viewing phenomena lacking independent self-existence as if they possessed such independent self-existence. So this is the most profound of all. And to get into this, these are the teachings on emptiness. Because emptiness doesn't mean that things don't exist. It means they don't exist in the mistaken way we believe they exist, as inherent, solid, independent, etc. Okay. So I just wanted to mention those 3 views because they're such an important part of all of the Buddhist teachings. But here, in this class, I was hoping I would focus more on the particular mistake. I don't know whether you can say it's a mistaken view. It's a mistaken attitude. Maybe attitude is better than view here. Okay, it's a mistaken attitude which is the biggest obstacle to following the Bodhisattva path to enlightenment. Right? These 3 views are also obstacles to enlightenment, but they're mainly what they are is they're obstacles to liberation. They're obstacles to liberation from suffering. Nirvana. This other one that I'm about to talk about is the obstacles to complete enlightenment. The state of a Buddha, the fulfillment of our Buddha nature. So even if you didn't read these sheets yet, because you haven't had time to do so, maybe you can guess from your other teachings on the Mahayana what is the biggest obstacle to attaining enlightenment? Or I'll put it another way, towards following the Bodhisattva path.
Self-cherishing.
Self-cherishing thought.
Yeah, the self-cherishing mind. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. That's the biggest obstacle. So the bad use of the word discriminate is when we say we're discriminating against someone, right? But here, we're talking about discriminating between, meaning to be able to see differences. To be able to use our intelligence to see this works and that one doesn't. This is good, this one's bad. This leads to a happy result, this leads to an unhappy result. So we're able to use the power of discrimination, not in a negative way, but in an extremely positive way. And particularly, what's really deeply involved here is to discriminate between those thoughts that are productive and those thoughts which eventually are destructive. Or to put it another way, between those thoughts that accord with reality and those thoughts which do not accord with reality.
Can we use the word wisdom instead?
Yes. Yes. Wisdom is an application of this intelligence, right? Especially, because we can use our intelligence for very ordinary things. You know, discriminating intelligence on if we're playing cards, if we're playing poker with someone, we can discriminate between which hand is a winning hand and which hand is a losing hand, right? So that requires some intelligence to do that. We have to learn the game, we have to be able to read the cards, we have to remember that. That's all intelligence. But it isn't necessarily wisdom, right?
That's actually.
You know, we can be a very intelligent poker player, but we may not develop any wisdom from that, right? But wisdom uses that intelligence to actually do something transformative about our life. Right? Something about the nature of reality, not just how to play cards. So we can use our discriminating intelligence in every field of endeavor. But here, you know, the Dalai Lama says, he said in number 1, utilize our human intelligence in the maximum way. And I think what he means by in the maximum way is what you said, to use it to cultivate real wisdom. Not just facts, you know, but real wisdom, okay? Now, one of the things that's very, well, in my own experience of studying Buddhism that made such a big impact on me was that Buddhism claims that before any state of mind arises, like before any emotion, for example, there's already a view taking place in the mind. For example, you know, very often when we talk about the negative emotions, the delusion, very often we use anger or hatred as an example because it's so obvious, you know, it's so obvious, so violent. We can use other ones as well, but take the feeling of being angry with somebody. Well, before the actual anger arises, we view that person in a negative light. there's something about that person which is, well, we could almost say ugly, repulsive, not attractive, unattractive. Either the way the person looks, or the thing the person said to us, or something about the person is making him or her appear in this kind of dark light, this unfavorable light. And when we see him or her in that unfavorable light, then it's very, very easy for this irritation to arise. And as the irritation gets stronger, it becomes anger. If the anger gets stronger, it becomes hatred. But it's all coming from seeing this person somehow or other as negative. And sometimes in our life, we learn a lot when we make kind of mistakes, mistakes in perception. Like, I just thought of an example. I'm really not sure if it's a good one because it just came to my mind. You're walking down the street in a kind of a crowded city, and there's someone coming. You don't see this person very, very clearly, but as he or she passes you, they bump into you. Right? And before you didn't think about this person at all, but now you see this person as someone who bumps into other people, someone who bumps into me, So you see that, you already have a negative view about that person arises. It's no longer just somebody on the street. It's someone I don't like. And because the person is appearing as someone you don't like, it's very easy in response to that to get angry. Now you might, if you got really angry, you might actually bump the other person back, or if you got a little bit angry, you might swear at that person, and if you're able to control it, you might not do anything on the outside, but on the inside, you're kind of on fire, right? So there's some kind of angry reaction. But sometimes what happens is, after an experience like that, you turn around and you look at this person and you recognize, oh, I didn't see it. This is actually a friend of mine. This is not a stranger. This is not someone who is trying to hurt me or is very, very careless with his behavior. Someone that I can get angry at. I didn't realize, this is my good friend Joe, right? Now, when you recognize this person as being your dear friend Joe, who you like a lot, you don't see him or her, because Joe could be a woman too, right? You don't see Joe in this negative light anymore. Because actually you never saw Joe in a negative light. You saw this stranger in a negative light, and now when you realize that stranger is actually your friend, and you like this person, now you see it in a positive light. And as soon as you see it in a positive light, even though he just bumped into you, even though she just jostled you on the street, you don't feel angry anymore. The anger disappears. Because now you're seeing this person in a positive light. Now you might say, as a joke, hey Joe, next time you should look where you're going, because that kind of knocked me off balance. But you don't do it with there's no anger anymore, is there? So the event, being bumped in the street, the event is the same in both cases, right? But because we have a positive view about one person bumping us and a negative view about the other person bumping us, even though in this case it's actually the same person, right? We just didn't realize it. Then with one person we react with anger and the other person we don't. With the other person we make a joke about it. So this is one example of how before any emotional reaction, there's already a view in place. It might only take a second for it to arise, or it might be a long-standing view that we've cultivated, but it's on the basis of that view that the emotional reaction follows. There's one example I remember thinking about many years ago when I first was studying this, and that was watching how parents deal with a young child, like a baby who has a fever. And sometimes when little children have a strong fever, they become a bit delirious. And so you can picture, let's say the mother, could be the father, holding this little baby, trying to comfort the baby. And the baby, or the young child, is so kind of delirious and so out of control that it starts beating on the parent. Now, ordinarily, if someone is beating on you, you get upset. It's irritating. And even if it's a little baby or a child, it can hurt. It can hurt if they're beating on you, right? But does the parent get angry at the child for beating him or her? Is that the reaction? If you know the child has a fever, and you know the child is delirious, and when the child is beating you, you may still want to protect yourself, it may still hurt, right? But the emotional reaction to being beaten by the child is no longer anger, is it? In fact, it's the opposite. Why is it the opposite? Why is it compassion? Tell me, why do you think? Assuming the example is an appropriate example, why would a parent feel great compassion to a child who has just been beating her? And
the baby's
why?
suffering? Because the baby's suffering?
Because the baby's suffering.
Yeah, exactly. Because the parent knows my child would never do that when she's feeling healthy. For the child to be behaving like this, there must be something wrong. And then, of course, when you touch the child's forehead, you say, oh, he's burning, he's got a fever, right? So the more the child is hurting you physically, the more you feel compassion for mentally and emotionally, right? Because your view of the child is seeing him or her in this very positive light. It's my child, it's my dear one, it's my beloved. And of course, the opposite could be true. If there's someone who has, treated you badly in the past and has really been very untrustworthy, and on this particular occasion they come up to you and they say very nice, very sweet things, often instead of being pleased by that, we start thinking, it must be up to something, must be trying to fool me somehow. So even though the words and the actions are very pleasant, they might not cause us to have a pleasant reaction. We might start getting worried or suspicious, right? Because of our view. It's not because the words are bad, the words are nice. But our view is so negative that even the nice words produce a negative emotion. Okay? So these are just some examples of how before we act or react to something, there's already a view in place leading up to that reaction. And it's amazing how quick the mind can work. And does that explanation, does that make sense out of your experience?
Yes, of course.
Yes, all the time.
Yeah. Because You know, I think in ordinary world experience, for people who, let's say haven't spent time kind of examining the nature of the mind, really looking inwards, the view is often 180 degrees opposite to that. What I mean is, if you say, I'm not sure I'm going in the right direction with this. I'll just speak and we can correct it later. But if you ask someone, why do you dislike that person? Why do you dislike that person? And the answer you get is because he's a bad person. Right? So there's this feeling, there's a badness in the person, and my disliking him is just the natural reaction to his badness. But actually, when you think about it, the badness, it's not that we dislike the person because he's bad. The badness is a projection of our not liking him. That didn't come out exactly the way I meant. But I think there's some truth to it, even stated like that. I think it's an example that works for this is different kinds of, like, let's say if there's a whole group that we're prejudiced against, whether it's members of that religion or members of that race or members of that nationality, whatever it is, whatever the group is, then we start painting everybody in that group with that same color. They're bad, they're untrustworthy, they're dirty, whatever our prejudice is towards that group. Right? We just paint it on all the members of that group. And then when we say, when someone asks us, why do you dislike so-and-so? Why do you dislike that person? Then we're apt to say, I dislike it because he's mean, he's evil, he's bad, he's dirty, right? So because he's all those things, then I'm justified in not liking him, right? But the reality is that we started out with a not liking, not this particular person, but the whole group, right? And from that, now each individual member appears to be untrustworthy, dirty, violent, whatever it is. Right? So we're not actually reacting to the reality of that person. We're only reacting to our projection about the group as a whole, which may not at all be true for this individual person. Like in the world today, there's a lot of people who really dislike Muslims. In the United States, there's a lot of people. And I would say that the people who dislike Muslims probably don't even know any Muslims. You know what I mean? It's just a word. They have a picture in the newspaper of someone who's been identified as an Arab, let's say, and they know he's Muslim, and then there's all this political stuff going on. And so now everyone who looks like that, or seems to be like that, or has a name like that, there's automatically a feeling that person's bad, untrustworthy, dirty, violent, whatever. But that quality is not from the side of the person. That quality is being projected by our view. If we didn't have that view, we would just see that person as just another person. Now, once we got to know that person, we might find out that he really is a son of a bitch. We really don't want to spend time with him. He's cheating and, he's untrustworthy. But not because he's a member of the group, but because that's the kind of person he is. Because later we might meet another member of that group who's really sweet, really beautiful, really lovely. But if we didn't get to know him, if we only saw him through the group identity, then again we would have that same anger towards them, thinking they're bad, they're untrustworthy, they're violent, they're, whatever. So we are very much at the mercy of our views, especially those views that we haven't investigated. The views, for example, that us or our teachers or our society, it's not like we have any personal reason for hating Muslims or blacks or Jews or Italians or whatever the group might be. It's not that we don't have any reason for that. It's just that the Muslims or the Jews or the Italians are untrustworthy, bad people. So when we see someone in that group, we already have that view, and we've never really investigated it. We just it just came, right? So in Buddhism, using our intelligence to a maximum degree means checking up on our view, checking up on the views, especially the ones we've never really investigated, especially those strong views, those prejudicial views. But within the scope of Buddhism, there are certain views that anyone can have. In fact, some of them everyone has, which are also contrary to reality. And because they're contrary to reality, they only bring about suffering and dissatisfaction. So not everybody hates Muslims or hates Jews or hates Italians, not everybody feels that way. But pretty much everybody has these deeper views. And using our human intelligence is to check out if we have those views, and if they're incorrect, how can we change them to something that is more in accord with reality? Now, Anna, did you want to ask something?
I did. Well, I do.
Please.
Thank you. In
Please.
everyday life, every instance, you are reacting towards a view that you have, and as you're saying right now. So most of the time, for what I'm listening, is I have the wrong view. I do have a wrong view of something I'm seeing. Example, like I don't know, children, or what I'm getting at is, how can you check up your views all the time? And is it, I know with with that wisdom, with that intelligence, but with equanimity, trying to do an equanimity thought towards others, watching into why are they acting that way, and there's something, there's suffering, and trying to see that and stop yourself and go into that place, because it's all the time. I mean, it's a very challenging, I guess, it's hard work, I guess, but is it equanimity something that you can develop this a little bit more, or
Mm-hmm. Okay.
did I?
There's some,
I'm sorry. Did I express myself well? I don't know if I.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I think I understand. By the way, just for a second, the picture up until a minute ago was very clear and just suddenly went out of focus. And all of you look like an impressionist painting now.
We'll come back.
Okay.
I mean, very pretty painting, but you know what I mean, kind of fuzzy.
Yeah.
So I don't know what it is. It's same thing with the sound. Sometimes it's clear, and then sometimes suddenly it gets fuzzy.
Yes.
And the picture sometimes clear, and it was clear the whole time up to now, and then a little fuzzy. Now I can still see you,
Okay.
right? But it's nowhere near as clear as it was. I wonder why that happens.
I don't know. Maybe it's a connection.
Yeah, it's gotta be.
The internet. So
Yeah,
hopefully it will
Okay.
come back.
yeah. Yeah, actually, maybe it's the magic words, because when you said maybe it'll come back, as soon as you said back, it got clearer again. Okay. So, a couple of things in response to what Anupala just mentioned. First of all, it's not as if all our views are incorrect. You know? So we don't have to be suspicious about everything that we're thinking, right? What we have to be specifically suspicious about is if our thoughts are causing us some kind of disturbance. You know, if we're getting uptight or anxious or angry or dissatisfied, if we're having an experience like that, that's a kind of a signal that our mind is under the influence of a view which is very probably not strictly in accordance with reality. There's something not quite right about it. And you know, there's a piece of advice sometimes we see written on signs or on the backs of cars. Don't believe everything you think. Have you ever heard that one? Don't believe everything you think. Some people say don't believe anything you think, but I think that's wrong. I think you can believe certain things you think, but not everything. Not everything. In fact, in one of Lama Yeshe's teachings, he said, whenever you have a fixed idea about something, like I'm like this, he's like that. Whenever you have a fixed idea about it, Lama Yeshe said, you're hallucinating. That's exactly what he said, you're hallucinating. Right? Well, that doesn't sound right, you know, until you think about it. A fixed idea. Like it's, like let's say a person, that case of the person who walks down the street and bumps into you, and you think how rude that was, okay? If at that point you think, well, that, you know, that person wasn't watching what he was doing, or that person wasn't really considering how crowded the street was, right? Those thoughts are accurate. That's an accurate statement as to what happened. But then, when you start reacting to it with anger, hatred, irritation, strong irritation like that, now you're freezing that person into a position, you know? You're not leaving any room that, oh, maybe the person just tripped and didn't see where he was going, or maybe this person is a little bit dizzy. Maybe he just had a doctor's appointment and therefore he can't walk as straight as he normally does. You know, you don't think of anything, you just think of, that's a rude person. Right? So you fix his view that he's bad in a certain way. There's no room for excuses that, you know, again, he might be dizzy or tired or this or that. You just project this static view, this kind of permanent view. This is a bad person from his own side. You know? So I think whenever we find ourselves locking into a solid view, particularly a solid view that makes us uncomfortable somehow, either uncomfortable with irritation, or it could be, you know, in cases, it could be also uncomfortable, uncomfortable in a way we like. You know, I don't think any of us feel comfortable with anger or hatred. Maybe there's some people who do, you know, but usually that's not a very comfortable feeling. But think of the opposite. Think of when someone appears really attractive, super, super attractive, you know? And now here, if that person is walking down the street, you know, we might, you know, our eyes may suddenly shift, you know? We can't get our eyes off of this person. Or we can think of how attractive he or she is. And many people recognize that as a very positive feeling. You know, they like it. They like that excitement. But along with that excitement often comes a really exaggerated view, having nothing to do with the reality of that person. You know, the person may be have a lot of really bad habits, but if he or she is attractive enough, you might think, oh, that's a really nice person. Until we get to know him, or until we get to know her. It's just the opposite for the person who does something kind of not so nice and we get an angry feeling. Once we get to know him, then we might actually like him. This is the exact opposite, you know. But in both cases, because we had that solid view, we exaggerated the qualities. If it's an unattractive quality, the person is now bad. If it's an attractive quality, the person now appears to be good. But the people that we meet are not 100% bad, even if sometimes they do things, they're not good. And the people who are attractive aren't 100% good. You know? So when we lock onto some idea really solid and it disturbs our peace of mind, that's a sign that we're hallucinating. We're not seeing things correctly. Now, does that mean that we can't feel, you know, that we can't like certain things or dislike certain things? You know, that we can't, you know, some people, they hear teachings like that and they say, well, I love my children. My children appear beautiful to me. According to this teaching, that's just an hallucination. You know, I shouldn't think of my children this way, you know? I shouldn't love my children, see them as beautiful, right? Sometimes people, you know, worry because they're so used to certain views. Once we start examining the nature of the mind, a lot of doubts come up. But I think we can get past those doubts if we're really honest with ourselves and see, has my peace of mind been disturbed by this? You know, because you can see something as negative, you know, because it is negative, because it is harmful, but it may not disturb your mind. It may impel you to do something about it, or it may arouse your compassion. And the same thing is true for something that's positive. You might like it, but that doesn't necessarily mean You're hallucinating about it. You might like it for certain reasons. But when any of those reactions are exaggerated, you know, if we turn the person we don't like into a devil and the person we do like into an angel, right? We're no longer dealing with reality. Despite what the love songs say. You know, the love songs say, if there's an attractive woman or an attractive man, he or she is an angel. And even in our language, we say, oh, you're such a dear, you're a real angel. When we say that, that's okay, just to say it. But if we really believe that this person is not like all other human beings in having a combination of body and mind, some aspects of which are attractive, some aspects of which are unattractive, if we actually think this is a real angel, that's as much of a hallucination as thinking this person is a real devil. Now, I'm not sure whether what I've just said is agreeable to everyone or not. Because again, I mean, you know, even if I were a Buddhist saying these things, you're not supposed to accept them as true. That's not the Buddhist style. But certainly, if I'm not anywhere even close to being a Buddha, just somebody from New Jersey, there's no reason to believe what I'm saying is true. Even if I've been a student for a long time, I don't always get things right, you know? What's important is does that make sense? That exaggeration to the negative and the positive side, does it come from some kind of hallucinated fixed view? And if it does, what is that hallucinated fixed view? And is there a way of letting go of it and replacing it with something more in accordance with reality? Okay, so we're back, and George, you had something you wanted to say?
Sure, yes. Well, you were saying to not believe everything you said, so here we go. You said that it's okay to kind of dislike someone that really deserve to be disliked at. Like, we can Yes. We can dislike a person who is an assassin, a person who is a rapist, for instance. We know that this person is a rapist, then it's okay to dislike this person. And then
No.
I understood that you say, yes, it's okay to dislike a person like that. But then in my mind, I was thinking that instead of cultivate this mental construction that I dislike this person because this or that, I don't know, I think it would be better to practice to see this person with compassion as a sick person. That this person is doing this because his motivation is trying to be happy, looking for happiness in the wrong place with the wrong actions, but that's what he's trying to do. So I should feel sorry for this person for being so wrong, instead of just, I'm gonna dislike you, I don't talk to you, get out of my face. I don't know, I think, you know, it's not good to have this point of view where it's okay to dislike people and to disregard them as being around you.
I think you're 100% right. I think you're completely right. And maybe when I was speaking, maybe I was not so clear. I wasn't saying to dislike the person. You can honestly, though, say that action that the person did was not a good action. And you can dislike the action. Right? But it's a completely different thing to dislike the person. So if I gave the impression that you can dislike the person, because when you dislike the person, then what you're doing is you're saying that negative action that he did is the person.
Exactly.
Right? Which is never true.
Okay.
Because a person may act terrible on Monday and do something wonderful on Tuesday, right? So a person is very changeable, but that doesn't change the fact that some things that he does are good and some things that are bad. So I'm glad you brought that up, because
Yeah, maybe I didn't get it right, sorry.
Well, no, I also sometimes speak a bit sloppy. So I'm glad you brought that up.
Good.
I'm a little bit, I'm trying to go over in my mind now how to approach the rest of this time we have together, because I mentioned that so much that's involved here is using our intelligence to see, to discriminate between those things that accord with reality and are to be practiced, and those that don't, like all the wrong views that should be avoided. And the first examples that I give on the sheet of paper, and what we just started talking about now, is all approaching it from one point of view, which is not, in fact, the main focus of the Lojong teachings. Right? I mean, they're part of the Lojong teachings. They're definitely a part of Buddhism, definitely. But the Lojong teachings themselves, the main focus is not so much those views, those specific views that we can number. There's three that are kind of mentioned on this sheet, which appear again and again in the Buddhist literature. It's not so much those three, it's something else. Okay? So maybe first I should just say very little bit about the three, which are the three main mistaken views that the Buddhists taught about, that's responsible for our suffering, and then shift into what is the main mistaken view from the point of view of the Lojong teachings. Okay? Okay. Well, maybe you know from reading or from your own study what any of these three are, like especially the first one that's mentioned here on the sheet. What is that mistaken view that's responsible for so much suffering? You have an idea? Next time I should try to get these notes to you beforehand so you can kind of read them before coming to class. So here, let's look at numbers 4 and 5. I'll just read through number 4 and 5. For example, although all the phenomena appearing to our 5 physical senses are impermanent, meaning they change from moment to moment, we mistakenly view them as permanent and unchanging. That's the first of the three major views responsible for our suffering. To see that which is always changing as if it was solid and unchanging. As a result of this distorted view, we exaggerate the badness of an unattractive object and the goodness of an attractive object, causing us to generate anger and hatred towards the former and greed and attachment to the latter. And such disturbing emotions as hatred and greedy attachment, in turn, causes us to speak and act in ways that are harmful to ourselves and others, producing unwanted suffering by means of karmic cause and effect. So, if when we think something, let's say something is attractive to us, if in addition to thinking it's attractive, we think it's permanent, it's always going to be attractive, then it's very easy to develop a sense of possessiveness towards it, wanting to possess it, wanting to own it, wanting to have it. On the first page, because it has more to say about those incorrect views that I was talking about. On the second page, starting with number 8. Tell you what, for number 8, maybe if you wouldn't mind, maybe one of you read it. George, why don't you read the first one? Read number 8.
Okay. The teachings on mind training, Tibetan Loyang, in the Mahayana tradition have a higher aim that merely seeks one's own personal liberation from suffering. Instead, out of deep, heartfelt concern for the welfare of all, those following the Bodhisattva path are motivated to fulfill their highest potential, their so-called Buddha nature, through the practice of the 6 perfections, and they thereby attain the peerless enlightenment of a Buddha.
There's a lot in that, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure there's any question. It's just a statement of what the goal of the Mahayana path is. So the second one, number 9. Would you like to read that, Claudia?
Sure. Such unsurpassed, complete, and perfect enlightenment, Sanskrit, I may mangle this, Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, possesses the unlimited compassion, wisdom, and skillful means enabling one to work spontaneously and effortlessly for the benefit of all.
Thank you. Now, I put the Sanskrit in there just because some people might be curious. Anuttara Samyak Sambodhi, it's referring to the enlightenment of the Buddha. Sometimes other forms of attainment, like nirvana, sometimes they're called enlightenment as well, but they're not the full, complete enlightenment of Buddhahood. So I thought you might be interested in seeing what the Sanskrit was for the full and complete enlightenment, right? And in it, there's a definition of what enlightenment is. It's enlightenment is a quality of mind which possesses unlimited compassion, unlimited wisdom, and unlimited skillful means. And with those 3 in possession, that is what enables us to work spontaneously and effortlessly for the benefit of others. And remember, that's the whole aim of the Bodhisattva, is wanting to help everyone in the maximum way possible. And so you need compassion, not just for some, but for everyone. You need wisdom, not limited, but for some, but for everyone. You need wisdom, not limited, is said to be surpass any of the pleasure, any of the bliss, so far out. So it's good not to forget that. Okay. So now, number 10, maybe Anatoly, you do?
Sure. This attainment fulfills the aspiration expressed when one takes the Bodhisattva vow and declares, "The purpose of my life is to free all my kind mother sentient beings from suffering and to lead them to enlightenment."
Yeah. This is a huge statement because, it comes up in people's conversation, what's the meaning of life? What's the purpose of life? And everyone has some kind of purpose, whether it's clearly stated or not, And, for many people, the purpose is very it's very strong, but very short-sighted. You know, my purpose is to become the richest person in the world. Purpose is to become the most famous person in the world. Purpose is to become the strongest or the fastest person in the world, you know? And so you have things like, you know, Olympic Games and races and so forth, and you have people competing to become the fastest and the strongest and the best. And that's, you know, healthy sport and competition. But where it becomes a problem, I think, where it becomes a problem is that whatever that attainment is you don't stay being the fastest and the strongest and the best and the richest. You can attain that for a period of time, but it doesn't last. It doesn't last. And so there's no final satisfaction with those goals. And in fact, sometimes those goals create a tremendous amount of suffering. You know, I'm thinking of, you know, because the Olympics and those kinds of, in the sporting season and everything, I'm thinking in those terms, but you can think of it in any category of human endeavor. What happens when the person who has become the best in his field or her field, what happens when that person gets a little bit older? You know? No, not only is now the person not going to be the best tennis player or the best pole vaulter or the best whatever. Not only is it not going to be that anymore, but up until that point, so much of that person's energy has been put into that identity, right? And now, when you're no longer able to compete, what happens to these people then? And if you read the newspapers, you find out what happens. A lot of them, after they retire, fall into alcoholism or drug dependency or very antisocial behavior. I'm not saying everyone, but some do. Some do. Why? Because their whole life was structured around being the best in this, or the best in that, or the best in the other thing. And they were. Many of them were successful, and they were the best for a while. And now, after a while, they can't even compete anymore. So they live in the past. You know, they go to the bar and get drunk and tell people, oh, 20 years ago, I was the best. 30 years ago, I was the best, right? And then they slip into this state of despair. Why? Because their identity was based on quicksand. Does that sound, I mean, I'm using sports as an example. You can use anything as an example. Does that make sense from your experience or what you see with people?
Yes.
So here, the reason it's mentioned it is that as you train your mind in these qualities of compassion, wisdom, skillful means, and so forth, as you train your mind in that becomes something that can continue. You know, that can bring happiness not just now in the present moment, but in the future, and not just in the future of this life, but even in the future of other lives. So it becomes something a lot more reliable to base one's satisfaction on. Okay. So that statement about the purpose of my life, here it's really quite different. The purpose in life is basically to help others. And I think it's at this point that many spiritual traditions which have differences between them, I think it's at this point, or close to this point, where they start coming together. because the various spiritual traditions around the world, at least the major ones that I'm aware of, none of them say the purpose of life is to be selfish. It always comes down to helping others, to loving others, to supporting others. Not every teacher of every religion says that. You have people who say the purpose of our religion is to kill the members of the other religion. You do have people who say that. But if you really go back to the core of those spiritual traditions, you'd find this same kind of thing. And the Dalai Lama is always emphasizing that, love, compassion, self-sacrifice, benefiting others, and so forth. Okay. So now the remaining verses, there's a paragraph and then 3 verses that follow, and these 3 are from a puja that I think many of you know, you either participated or watched. It's called the Guru Puja or the Lama Chupa. How many people have heard of that, the Guru Puja or the Lama Chupa? 2 of the 5. Okay. In many Dharma centers, this particular puja, this is an offering ceremony, is done at least twice a month. It can be done also more often, but there are certain days of the month in which this puja is generally done. And in it, there are many verses about the spiritual path, about all the things we've been discussing, generating the correct view, and etc. And then a whole section on the loja, on the mind training, thought transformation. Okay? And I selected these 3 from them. So, Maria, would you mind reading the first of those 3?
This chronic disease of cherishing myself is the cause giving rise to my unsought suffering. Perceiving this, I seek your blessings to blame, begrudge, and destroy the monstrous demon of selfishness.
Yeah, thank you. So, this chronic disease of cherishing myself, it's very easy to misunderstand what that's saying. Is that saying that we shouldn't like ourselves?
No.
It almost sounds like it. To cherish oneself, to like oneself. They sound kind of similar, don't they?
Yeah.
I mean, in a certain respect, we should cherish ourselves, right? If we don't think we're worthwhile, then we might as well eat poison instead of eating good food. Or we might as well live a very unhealthy lifestyle and die sooner. We have to cherish ourselves to some extent just to stay alive. So here, the chronic disease of cherishing myself must not mean just liking oneself or taking care of oneself. It has to mean something else. So what does it mean in addition to just liking oneself or taking care of oneself?
Selfishness.
Say again?
Selfishness.
Okay, can you expand on that a little rather than just one word?
Just watching out for yourself.
From what death.
Yeah, but as I said, it's okay to watch out for yourself so that you don't die. That's
Yeah.
okay.
But over others. It's like
Yeah.
living by what this I want,
When I want it.
when I want, what I want,
Yeah.
instead of cherishing others.
Yeah.
Kind of like
One of that's getting much closer to what it really means. It's not just liking yourself. It's not just taking care of yourself. Those are important. It's regarding yourself as more important than others.
the key.
That's the difference. It's all right to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself. But not in the sense that I take care of myself because I'm more important than others and my welfare is more important. Because when people feel that way, take any action that supports your life, like eating, okay? Right? So we should eat, shouldn't we? You know, if we don't eat, we're going to die, and then there's no path, there's nothing, right? So we should eat. We should at least try to stay healthy. Okay. But let's say there's a limited amount of food. Right? Self-cherishing isn't just eating food. It's saving it or taking it for oneself instead of sharing it with others. Thinking it's more important for me to have the food than for others. That's self-cherishing. It's pushing oneself ahead, putting one's own needs ahead of others. So when Anapola said selfishness, that's the correct answer if we understand it in that way. You know? Placing one's own needs and wants and desires above that of everyone else. Okay. I think it's important to understand that because a lot of people, they get this idea, oh, I'm a religious person, I'm a spiritual person, I'm trying to be like that, therefore I shouldn't do anything for myself. Everything I do should be for others. Well, the words might be okay. I mean, the words are okay because Lama Zopa uses those same words, you know. But what's wrong is when we get this feeling like we're guilty if we take anything for ourselves, right? Lama Yeshe used to joke, he says, people who have this exaggerated view think, I can't even enjoy a piece of chocolate, you know, because my enjoyment is selfish. So we have to have a kind of a balanced approach. Now, the really positive thing about all of this is that selfishness does not exist in the action. Selfishness exists in the attitude or the motivation behind the action. Right? So there are certain actions that we can do that it's selfish if one person does it and not selfish if the other person does it, because they're doing it with different motivations. Right? So a person who takes food in order to sustain their life so that then they can go out and help others, right? Then their eating is not a selfish act because they're doing it with the motivation, may this give me the strength to benefit others. Like a perfect example of that is the Buddha himself. You know, he spent 6 years starving himself. I think a lot of you know the story, before he attained enlightenment. And then he almost drowned, he was so weak. And then this woman, Sujata, offered him this very nutritious food. And when his companions saw him take this food, they thought, oh, now he's become selfish again. You know, he's just interested in his own welfare. But at that point, he took this delicious food, not for his own pleasure, but because he could see it would give him the strength to attain the enlightenment that he was looking for. And with that enlightenment, then he could benefit others. So my eating a piece of chocolate might be very selfish. Buddha's eating a whole bowl of very nutritious milk rice had no selfishness in it at all. Why? Because of the motivation. Like that. So it always comes back to the thought behind the motive behind what we're doing. That's the most important determining factor. Now, of course, there are certain actions which we should avoid because they're very harmful, and other actions we should try to do because they're very helpful. But for the vast majority of actions, it's the motive with which we're doing it which determines whether it's part of the spiritual path, whether it's part of the path that leads to enlightenment or not. Okay? I think there might have been a question, but was there a question? Because the picture went blank for a minute, and I thought I saw someone raise their hand.
I don't think
No?
so. No.
Okay. And the thing I wanted to point out in that first verse that Maria just read is this verse points out what our real enemy is. You know? Our real enemy is not the people who harm us. Or the people who disagree with us. Our real enemy is this habit of pushing ourselves first, viewing ourselves as more important than others. You know, this demon of self-cherishing. So in the Lojong teachings, time and time again, one is encouraged to put the blame for whenever anything goes wrong, put the blame primarily on the self-cherishing attitude. And of course, that's, you know, it's completely opposite. You know, when something goes wrong, when we don't like it, it's the other person's fault, it's the weather, it's the election, it's this, it's that. It's always something else. And we never turn around and see, was there something in my attitude which created this problem? And you have to look quite deep to see it. You know, sometimes it's not at all obvious. And that is the main thrust of the Lojong teachings. And if we don't understand that, if we don't get a sense of that, a feeling for that, then a lot of the teachings in Lojong are crazy. They're really outrageous. You know? Because they're so opposite to the way we think that life should be lived. Not in this text, but there's another Lojong text in which they say, take the defeat on yourself and give the victory to others. That's, if you went out into the world and you said that, you know, you got on television and you said, that's what we should do, is we should take on the defeat and give the victory to others. People say you're crazy. You know, what kind of philosophy is that? And of course, that has to be understood. Like when the Dalai Lama comments on it, he's talking about you give away a small victory in order to gain a great victory. So what's a small victory? A small victory is, let's say, you're going to the movies. You want to see a movie, there's a long line, and you're waiting online, and someone elbows his way in front of you. And of course, that's not right, you know, and that attitude is, you know, that's very antisocial behavior. You know, it's not right. But how do you react to it? How do you react to it? A lot of people feel justified in yelling at that person, insulting that person, maybe even fighting with that person, right? Even the people who don't yell and fight and scream, on the inside, you know, they think, oh, I just like to punch that guy in the nose, right? Okay. So what these teachings are saying is complete opposite of that. It said, take the defeat on oneself and give the victory to others. So, okay, this person's in front of you now, accept it. You know, take the defeat on yourself. Now I'm a little bit further back in the line than he was. But of course, that's a very small defeat. You've given that person a very small victory. Why? Because we want to overcome the self-cherishing attitude. When we do that, we gain the great victory of moving closer to enlightenment. So the Dalai Lama points out, you don't want to give away a big victory to others. You don't want to take on a huge defeat on yourself, the kind of defeat which would make it impossible for you to follow the spiritual path. But who gets the last piece of cake? Who stands in the front of the line? Who gets this? Who gets that? These are very small victories, and those we can give to others. Because if we give that victory to others, what we're defeating is our own self-cherishing. So we need to use intelligence. These teachings are not saying, be a masochist, right? Be a doormat, let people walk all over you. And a lot of people, I don't know about in other parts of the nation or other parts of the world, but a lot of the people, when they first hear the Lojong teachings, that's what they think. They think, oh, the Lojong teachings are telling us to be doormats. You know, let people walk all over us, have no self-respect. And I think a lot of people feel that because they've been taught that number one is the most important. No. We should look out for ourselves. If we don't look out for ourselves, you know, then that is the biggest failure in our life. And so when they hear the Lojong teachings, which seem to be saying the exact opposite, sometimes it's really difficult to make sense out of it until we understand what the true victory is and what the true defeat is. One more example, and then we can bring this to an end. There's also one teaching in the Lojong which says, if there's someone who is abusing you, insulting you, harming you, view this person as your guru, as your teacher. Right? Well, again, from a worldly point of view, that's just stupid advice, isn't it? Or is it? I mean, it sounds on the surface completely ridiculous. Why someone who harmed me is my teacher? But if we look deeper, we can find out that it's true. How could it be true? Do you have a sense for that? How is a person who harms you your teacher?
Showing you your reaction to it if you watch it.
Yeah, exactly.
It will give us the opportunity to practice the 6 perfections.
Exactly, all of those things. So usually when we think of a person as a teacher, it's someone who has some subject matter, okay? That's what we think of as a teacher. But here, when we say view the person who's harming you as a teacher, it doesn't mean that the person is trying to help us, right? But that very behavior is teaching us, especially teaching us patience, as well as all the other 6 perfections. Teaching us what's the nature of our mind. And that's the most important. So a lot of the Lojong teachings, as I just want to repeat one more time, they can be very shocking when we first hear them because they're so opposite to the way we normally view things. But if we understand what the fundamental purpose of them all is, then it starts making sense. Now, I want to bring this to a close by giving the one person who didn't have a chance to read a verse to have her read the last verse, because this verse is going to be the basis for what we do next week. Okay, but I'm sorry, Anupam, I forgot her name. I didn't hear her name so clearly.
Carolina.
Duro.
Carolina.
Carolina.
Carolina. Okay. Thank you, Carolina. Would you mind reading the last one?
No.
What?
No.
Okay.
She doesn't want to read.
Can I
Oh, okay. Okay, that's okay.
can I
Who
read
would
it?
like to read?
I'll do it. In brief, infantile beings labor only for their own ends, while Buddhas work solely for the welfare of others. With a mind understanding the distinctions between the failings of one and the advantages of the other, I seek your blessings to enable me to equalize and exchange myself with others.
So when we come back next week, of course, probably next week there'll probably be only one person in the audience.
No.
Instead of 12 or 5 or 4, we'll probably be down to maybe just the microphone. But anyway, at that time, we're going to focus a bit on the practices relating to the last words in that, the practices of equalizing and exchanging myself with others, and particularly with a practice that's the very heart of that, which is the sending and receiving practice. Sending and receiving, or giving and taking practice. Okay? So I don't know if I'll be able to send notes on that before the class, because there's quite a lot of things coming up in my life in this next week, but I'll make an effort to put something down. Actually, I do have something that I can send out rather quickly. It's 2 meditations. It's a transcript of 2 meditations. Some of you may be familiar with them, but I think a lot of you won't be. I can send it to, should I send it to Namdrol Ling, and then if you can get it and send it to the other people here?
Definitely.
Yes.
Or the other people who might be coming?
Yes.
Yes.
Because if you have a chance to see that or practice that before we come, that would be good. And I have the transcript, so you can actually read the meditations, but I also have a recording of the meditation.
Okay.
So that way you could actually listen to it and get familiar with it that way. I'll send the transcript first, and then I'll try to send the recordings as soon after that as I can. Okay. And then you can share it with the people here, or if you think there's other people who might want to come next week. Or you can go out on the street and give it to strangers. You can go to the North Beach and give it to all the people there. Okay. So I want to thank you very much for participating this evening. And so we did start off trying to cultivate as expansive, as altruistic a motivation as possible. Even if we didn't say thinking of the welfare of all sentient beings, at least we got out of the room. We got out of our own head and thought of others, and that's very realistic. Okay, so we tried to do that in the beginning, and the fruit of that is if there's anything that we kind of learned today or got a feeling for today, then that can start influencing how you deal with other people, how you relate to them, and that way it will benefit them. It's not just magical that you wish to benefit them and it benefits them, but it actually changes something in ourselves. That changes how we interact with others, and that does benefit others. It happens very realistically. Okay? So we try to do a good motivation in the beginning, then in the middle we try to concentrate as well as we can, even though there's some obstacles with sound and picture and things like that. We tried our best. And now at the end, we have to recognize that we spent 2 hours trying to understand something very precious. Even if we didn't completely understand it, that attempt is very positive and has created a positive energy. So we don't want to lose that energy, so we dedicate it. So in the same way that all the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas dedicate the virtuous merit of their positive actions with a deep understanding of the true nature of reality, so may we too dedicate whatever positive energy we've created here, so that all beings may be released from their mental and physical sufferings. So that teachers, such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama, Kyabje Zopa Rinpoche, and others, who reveal true paths leading to happiness, higher rebirth, liberation, and enlightenment, may be endowed with long and fruitful lifetimes. Also, so that we ourselves may come under the benevolent care of such compassionate teachers and in all future lives. May the enlightened beings inhabiting every corner of the universe continue to turn the peerless wheel of the Dharma, and may we ourselves complete the spiritual path as quickly and as thoroughly as possible, so that we can repay the infinite kindness we've received from each and every being. So, thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Jon.
Thank you, Jon.
Thanks,
Thank
Jon.
you, John.